In today's video, we're jumping back to our 2019 NHL offseason plan series, and we're discussing the Stanley Cup champions St. Louis Blues. We'll get into what to expect from their offseason coming up next. Welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey in the 2019 NHL offseason plan series. Now, it's been a little while since we jumped back to this series. Obviously, we've had a lot of breaking news when it comes to trades and free agents and the draft and all that. But I really want to take some time here and wrap this series up. We're going to discuss the Blues here today. And then after that, we have two more teams left, which I hope to get done here over the next couple days. Now, if you're new to this series, we cover them basically in three segments. Segment one, we're going to do a recap of their 18-19 season, look at some key team and individual statistics, and discuss any changes the team went through as well. In the second segment, we're going to look at their cap situation and any UFAs and RFAs that need to be looked after during this offseason. And then thirdly, we're going to discuss what things they need to do this offseason to either remain or get more competitive for next season. So let's jump in here with an 18-19 season recap for the Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues. Now, as you can see on the screen, we know the Blues had a terrific year, obviously being the Stanley Cup champions. They finished the regular season with a 45-28-9 record, 99 points, second place in the Central Division. Of course, early January, they were dead last, came back from the dead here after they made some key changes, including a coach and goaltending change, which worked wonders for this club. Now, jumping over and taking a look at some key team statistics here, we look at the power play and penalty kill first. Both of them were top 10 in the NHL, largely due to their second half performance. The power play clicked at a 21.1% rate, like I said, for 10th place, so obviously that's pretty solid. The PK also was solid with an 81.5%, also 10th best in the NHL. Obviously, if you take a look back at their record here as well, they were 38-19-6 under Craig Berube. Obviously, that went a long way to getting them where they are. Now, looking at goals for and against here, they finished with 247 goals for 15th best in the league, and goals against was only 223 for 6th best. So obviously, that second half performance really improved a lot of these statistics. Now, let's take a look at some of their key individual stats, including goaltending and their top scorers. Now, of course, the second half of the season was mainly held down in the net by Jordan Binnington, who came up from the minors and really took over from there. And the rest, as they say, is history. He finished the regular season with a 24-5-1 record, a .927 save percentage, and a very stingy 1.89 goals against average. Got himself nominated for the Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year, and appears to be this team's starting goaltender for the foreseeable future after the incredible playoff run he had here as well. Of course, this team was led in the regular season by some of their top scorers, including Ryan O'Reilly for 77 points. Of course, his playoff performance was even that much better, winning the Conn Smythe Trophy. Of course, Vladimir Tarasenko had a pretty solid year, over 30 goals and 68 points. Braden Shen with 54 points. David Perron came back to St. Louis for his third stint with the team, put up 46 points. And of course, the back end was led by captain and defenseman Alex Pietrangelo, 41 points for him as well. As far as what changes this team went through as well to kind of get where they're at, there's really not a lot to discuss. There was a lot of trade rumors swirling that Doug Armstrong was going to blow this thing up and had all kinds of trades on the table. We heard about Pietrangelo, we heard about Shen. There's all kinds of other deals that were being discussed, and he really didn't do a whole heck of a lot. He fired head coach Mike Yeo, let assistant Craig Berube take over, and then in January, they decided to move Chad Johnson off on waivers. He goes off to another team. They bring up Jordan Binnington from the minors. He kind of platooned a little bit with Jake Allen in the beginning and then just took over and really played the bulk of the games the rest of the way and really took over the net from there. So obviously that's really what changed their season, is having the goaltending position solidified and having a coach who really made these players believe in themselves and really was able to motivate them to get more out of them than they were getting before. Now let's jump over here and take a look at their cap situation and any contracts that are up for renewal this season. Now, looking first at their list of pending unrestricted free agents, we have forward Patrick Maroon, obviously signed a one-year deal last year, came home to his hometown team in St. Louis, won a Stanley Cup, so I'm sure they will do their best to sign him to another contract. I don't expect a big term for Maroon, but I can see him signing maybe a 2 or 3 year contract. They also have forward Chris Thorburn and defensemen Michael Del Zotto and Carl Gunnarsson. Not really sure that Thorburn or Del Zotto will return, but I can see Gunnarsson possibly returning. But now that we're into the free agent window here, I do see the fact that he's likely going to speak to other teams and see where things go, but not really quite clear exactly where Gunnarsson goes next year, but I wouldn't rule out a return to St. Louis. From the RFA standpoint, they have some big contracts that are going to need to be done here, especially for goalie Jordan Binnington. Hard to say how that one goes. Obviously, there's not a lot of comparables to really compare to here, but either way, he's going to get paid handsomely. They got defenseman Joel Edmondson, who needs a new contract. We got Ivan Barbashev, Robbie Fabry, Zach Sanford, Oscar Sundqvist, and Sammy Blais. Now, a lot of these guys really proved their worth, especially Barbashev, Sundqvist, and Blais ended up being a really important bottom six line for these guys. Sanford fit in well. He can play up and down the lineup. Spent the last part of the playoffs playing in the top six and fit in nicely. Not really sure about the future of Robbie Fabry, though, to be honest. Obviously, Fabry's had an injury plagued couple of years. After he came back and was cleared, he wasn't in the lineup on a consistent basis. Was given some opportunity, but just couldn't seem to seize it. So, not sure that Fabry returns there, to be honest. As far as some potential extensions, we could see Captain Alex Pietrangelo is entering the last year of his deal, as well as Braden Shen. So they could possibly be extended, but not a given. I mean, I do think that Doug Armstrong will want to keep them around after winning the Stanley Cup, but I guess we'll see how quickly they jump to that. There really isn't a huge rush. They could do it either later into the summer or into the next season as the things get underway. There's no rush, but we'll see what happens. Now, looking at the overall cap space, they have 16 contracts in place for next year with a total cap hit of $64.279 million, which leaves them $17.2 million in space. And as you can see, they've got a lot of contracts that need to be done here and fit within $17 million. Of course, the salary cap coming down to $81.5 is not going to help their case here. So they will kind of be forced to make some changes, but I do expect largely, 95% of the roster who won the Stanley Cup to likely come back next year. Now, as far as what this team needs to do to get better for next year, well, they can't really get a whole lot better than winning the Stanley Cup, but they do need to make some changes, a lot of it being cap driven. I do think with the emergence of Jordan Binnington, there's a good chance we could see a trade for goalie Jake Allen. He's got 2 years left in his contract, over $4 million, and as much as he could potentially be more suited for a backup role than a starter at this point in his career, I'm not really sure that they want to pay that much money to a backup goaltender. So depending on where the Binnington contract comes in, will probably determine if Jake is moved or not. But I do think it's quite a possibility. They need to consider this just to kind of free up some space. Let Binnington play the bulk of the games. He's young. He can play. He get the job done winning the Stanley Cup. They might be a little bit leery, hard to say, about keeping somebody with more experience around just because it was only 1 year. Even though you really couldn't ask for a better year, it's only 1 year. So obviously they're probably going to do a shorter term contract would be my guess, and then lock him up longer term after if everything continues. But in my opinion, trading Jake Allen is a real possibility, and if nothing more than to free up some space because they don't want to have that much money tied up in a backup goalie. Of course, locking up Jordan Binnington is equally as important, but like I said, I really don't know where that contract's going to land. There's not a lot to compare to. It's not often you see a goalie come up halfway through the year and just completely dominate, take over, and win the Stanley Cup. He's in unprecedented territory here, so it's really hard to say where things go, but could you see him signing maybe a 2 or 3 year contract at $4 or $5 million at least? I mean, I don't really know where this is going to land, but I do think it's fair to say that he's going to be making some pretty decent money, and that's going to certainly cause the team to make some other moves to satisfy what he's looking for. Now, of course, they do have a lot of younger players that have certainly earned bigger roles with the team. We saw Robert Thomas really emerge this year, get a lot of time in the playoffs as well. You got guys like Barbashev and Sundqvist and Sammy Blais. I would like to see Jordan Kyrou get more of an opportunity next year as well. So we'll see if they make many moves within the forward group, but I don't see a lot of significant changes. I mean, this team just won the Stanley Cup. They proved that they can win. I mean, their top two lines are pretty safe the way they are. I don't see significant changes outside of some tinkering moves, and any moves they do make here are likely going to be driven by financial reasons. They stay cap compliant. So I guess we will see it. Of all the guys that don't have contracts for next year, like I said, I'm not sure that Robbie Fabry returns. I'm not sure that Jake Allen comes back. And obviously within the UFA list, there's a few of those guys who could walk that were basically spare parts for the Blues here, but we'll see what happens. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on what the Blues need to do next year. Obviously, being the Cup champions, it's hard to make much of an argument that they need to get better, but certainly, how do they keep the team together, and can they go back-to-back here and win another Cup championship next year? I do think that there's no reason to believe that they can at least contend, but as we've seen here over the last number of years, winning back-to-back Stanley Cup championships is incredibly difficult. There's not too many teams that do it here in recent history. We saw the Capitals have a bit of a Cup hangover, I guess we could say, and went out in the first round this year, and we're all going to know firsthand just how hard it is to get back to where they need to be to win the Cup again. So as much as I will say that they should be contenders, by no means any kind of guarantees that they'll make it back to the finals and win again. But at this point, I don't think we have any reason why we can count them out either. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll continue the conversation. Stay tuned for the remaining teams in this series as we wrap this up, and we have some other exciting series coming for the summer, including some prospect series and a GM report card series as well, coming here over the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.